Um, well, I started in comics from 1993 when basically Top Cow was me and David Wall and Mark and Joe Benitez, who was starting there, who wasn't ready yet to do a book yet. It was it was a very magical time to kind of go into comics because Top Cow was actually in the same studio as Wildstorm at the time. So this is 1993, and everybody was out to try and beat each other, and so it really pushed your skill level wise, and all that kind of stuff. And then I co-created Witchblade while I was there, and eventually ran the creative side of Top Cow for a while. Um, and then I decided that I wanted to try and start my own company. And that was Avalon. And we actually had Hellcop appear in Ballistic Imagery in a short that was digitally painted before I was ready to digitally paint anything. um, and he did come out a little bit in at Top Cow, but then I was always friends from the old Homage days with Will Sportesio. We got along because we were both computer geeks and all that kind of stuff, and we decided, let's make a run at this ourselves. Let's start our own publishing company. So we started Avalon Comics. And the opening lineup was Aria, which was the #1 selling comic book, or actually the second highest selling comic book when it debuted of all comics. It was only X-Men was the only thing that beat it, and that's when X-Men was hot, And then we had The Wicked, which was basically the premise was the guy has the ability to undo the deal with the devil, and deals with that whole subculture of people who have, because apparently there are a lot more people out there who sold their soul to the devil than you're aware of. And then we had Arias, and we had Stone, which is going to be a Kickstarter again next month. That was Wilson, my book, and that was basically the premise of that is, what if Chris Hemsworth was Thor really and didn't know it? It's all Filipino legends and a Filipino lead and all that stuff, and dealing with all this. Agamats are his power thing, and they're a Filipino legend sort of thing. And then, of course, we had Hellcop. And I didn't get to do Hellcop. So I really, really always have wanted, if you look at all my sketchbooks that I've had over the decades, there's always been Hellcops in it. There's been fits and starts of like pages started and this, that, and the other thing, but always something kind of got in the way kind of thing. Anyway, so Avalon kind of went the way Avalon went, and it was mostly just, we had some issues like sometimes you do in businesses, right? Because all things sold pretty darn well. But and then so I had my coloring studio at the same time, so we did all this work for Marvel and DC and stuff, and started Marvel Nights with Jimmy and Joe, and then eventually, and I was still doing Spawn. I mean, Spawn. Todd was actually the guy who enabled me to leave Top Cow and start my coloring studio in the first place, and that was Avalon Color, and so I did with my studio about 150 issues of Spawn, probably something like that. And then I got hired as editor in chief over at Todd McFarlane's company, and we were going to do. I had Philip Tan taking over Spawn, and we were doing Godslayer Spawn. So we were trying to expand the line a little bit back then, and we were actually going to do with Brian Holguin a line of comics based on Todd's Dragons line. So because he did those really cool dragons back in the day, and then we thought, like, well, why not do a book? So I started doing those pages and sent them into Todd, and Todd was like, do you know, bud, the guy who's doing this dragons book, he's pretty good. I think maybe he should take over Spawn. Todd, that's me. You know that, right? So anyway, so I took over Spawn. I've known Todd for a very long time. Um, and so I did Spawn for a couple of years, and then I was trying to help Todd and Robert Kirkman staff their Haunt comic, at the time. And everybody, it was when Marvel and DC had exclusivity wars. Everybody who I ever called that was somebody I wanted was like, yeah, I'd love to do it. Oh, well, great. When will you be available? Oh, in 3 years. Yeah, okay, I can't wait. But then you'd have these meetings with artists that we would bring in, and Todd would be going, yeah, bud, you don't want to be known for doing Stan and Jack's characters. You want to be known for doing your own characters. And Robert, of course, would chime in with the same thing. And I'd be sitting in the back of the room going, I used to do my own characters. And it's like, and that's when, I think I got to be leaving. And that's when I started Anomaly Productions and I've, for the last decade now, just done my own characters and stuff. Sometimes us publishing ourselves and sometimes going through Image. If I ever do floppies, Image is the perfect, wonderful home. I have a wonderful relationship with Jim Valentino, is totally supportive over there of my stuff. The only time we did our own publishing was because Diamond didn't have the best distribution as far as bookstores. So we were doing original graphic novels that are hardcover. We were better off doing them ourselves as publisher and going through Ingram for distribution on those things. And then, the next, there just was the time. It's like, okay, what's next? What do I do next? It's like, we just finished, The Marked and just did Lighthouse. It's like, what's next? Hellcop's here. I gotta do Hellcop. And I gotta do Hellcop. And I started doing some bits and beats designy wise, and it kind of stuck. And like when I was at the show, so I just was finishing off the last layouts for issue 3. So issue 2 is done. Issue 3 is halfway done. And it's a lot of fun. It's just, I always liked the concept. The idea was that, everybody knows of the legend of the Philadelphia experiment. So in the 40s, there was the destroyer, then Philadelphia, where we decided to try and do a cloaking experiment, basically, right? And Tesla technology married with Einsteinian, not quite finished unified theory stuff. According to all the conspiracy legends, the thing winked out, right? So that was the first time we punched a hole in realities. We couldn't control it. We couldn't point it anywhere. We just made a hole there. And that's actually why Hellcop Central is actually in Philadelphia, because that's where we made our first big dent, right? And then as technology got better, all of a sudden we started figuring out, okay, maybe we can start pointing. And then as we started pointing the thing at different places, we also got the technology to know, wait a second, there's a hole that's opening up over there. Where's that hole coming from? So the idea that all the legends that we have of hell, or even these weird things like Loch Ness Monster or Sasquatch, are these things that are just stumbling into our reality from another reality. That's why we can't find them again, right? So they're only here for a little bit, and then they kind of make their way back through the soft spot, is what we call them. So everything in hell is basically they're just other creatures. They're just it's another world, is what it is, but we happen to go through that world ourselves. So we have like the ability with this technology that we have now to monitor the life essence as it leaves the body. And we know the life essence goes through plane 1301A, right? And some people recorporate there. Like, like John Lennon has had his 13th solo album going on in hell right now, and it's not that because you're bad that you're there. In fact, all the Hellcops they're not sure why people do it. Some people think they have unfinished business, or they're just too attached to our world to pass through. But we know other people do pass through, and we can't track that dimension. That goes beyond our ability. So this is the only dimension so far that we've been able to crack. But let me tell you, the spin-off's going to be eventually, is when we get a little bit farther, is there's a quantum theory that whenever something is created as a story, you actually create another universe, right, with that. And eventually it's going to be an adult version of Gumby and Pokey, where we can go into any book. Right, so we're going to have, because the Hellcops are called the Hellcops because that's the only plane that we've been able to get to, but they're really the transdimensional security corps. But they're nicknamed the Hellcops because that's where the only thing they've been able to go to. No, actually, I'm really kind of excited about that one. Because again, you can just, I mean, the stupid short version of it is some of the people who are involved in the project ultimately decide they're going to go in these places and they're going to start robbing things. They're going to take Excalibur. They're going to take, all these mythical things though, because they're going to be mythical and come back with them and cause all kinds of problems on our world. All that kind and Rob, I'll tell you, I'm when I send over the batch over to Ridley Scott, I'll make sure I show him your cover too. Yeah, it was a great cover. You did the one rule that most retailers hate though, Rob. You put the logo on the bottom basically. But I know you matched the design. Definitely one of my favorite covers.
Awesome.
Oh,
give me 1 second. Rob, are you still there? I think Rob might have dropped off. There we go.
Hey. Push me off.
There we go. All right.
That was awesome. I wanted to do the Jack Nicholson like Joker move from Batman, just push my way into the scene. Why couldn't I do that?
We were close. We were close.
Awesome.
No question. Hey, so do you want to give us a little bit of
about
like your background on sort of creating the poster and everything like that, or creating the cover?
Yeah, I'll try to be really brief. I tend to get very chatty, so I apologize in advance to anybody that's watching. So yeah, my background is a little bit different than Brian's, where I don't have a long heritage or history and a career in regards to comic books. Mine's a career that's started since I was young until now is always been illustration, painting, and so forth. But I got into various types of businesses and companies that eventually led me to the toy industry. So much like Brian, I started life, as a graphic designer, illustrator back in '87, and computers were different then. There really weren't any, so it was pen and ink, and there were 6 fonts to choose from, and you worked in a dark room, and that physicality of it lends itself to how growing up painting and drawing. So I still, to this day, in the digital realm, I still treat the software that I use in my mind in a physical sense. So anyhow, long story short, so my career went through a lot of toy and hobby companies doing things from product design to packaging, to a lot of illustration, a lot of conceptual development, and that was very rewarding. But several years ago, I got into one of my main passions is film, is movies, and comics, in my opinion, go hand in hand. And I got hooked up with some agencies in LA, and we did some movie posters, and I was able to do a lot of comps for folks. I was able to do some, stuff that actually got in theaters. That was pretty exciting. And then eventually that sort of dovetailed into book covers, and then eventually me meeting Brent, and it's been an absolute delight because I like to, my current style is what I would do when I oil painted. It's this hyper realism I go for. Sometimes it takes a bit longer than others, like this particular piece that I did. It took a bit longer, and it was one of those rare things where he called me one day and he says, okay, I got a project for you, and I wanted to hear your reaction over the phone. So yeah, one of my favorite film is Blade Runner. So he told me what it was, the concept. I just lost my mind because I knew immediately what the poster was. I lived and breathed it all my life, and then I started digesting Brian's work as far as Hellcop today, and I love the conceptual ideas. I love your narrative ideas, Brian. And in my brain, when I'm doing this stuff, when I'm doing these covers, I look at them as movies. I look at them as like, if I were to go watch a movie, this is what I like to see in the theater, you know, or see it online or whatever. So it was an absolute pleasure to do this piece because I looked at the poster. I've looked at it a million times in my life since '82.
Well, and that all comes through too, Rob, in the piece.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And to me, it was like I wanted to evoke things because I could have went the route. And Brent said this when he eventually saw the pieces. You did something different, unique, and I wanted to put me into it. But also, the most important thing is pay homage to the original, but also pay some due diligence and respect to what you're doing, Brian. Because at the end of the day, these variant covers, these comics, this product, whatever, the folks that are watching, it's like, this is stuff hopefully people are into, right? And it's what I learned in product design. It's like when I'm designing something for 8 months to a year and I'm doing research on ergonomics and so forth, or making sure the electronics works, we have our creative briefs, I try to get into the mindset of the end user, the people that want to watch the movie, read the comic books or whatever. So yeah, when I did that piece, it was at once a fan of the movie, a emerging fan of Brian's work with the newly relaunched Hellcop, and my desire to merge those ideas together and say, if this could eventually become a film, that's what I want to see. So I poured my heart into it because I wanted to make sure these little details were in there. It's like, okay, do we have Cthulhu type of iconography where it's like, I want to see tentacles in here. I don't want to see like the monster. Wait a second. I'm going to put the monster's faces in his lenses because he has those really cool round glasses. I like the gold tint that you have in your comic. I'm like, okay, it's like in my brain, it's like, oh, it's like NASA.
That was Jared's call. He's the one who went with the gold lens.
No, thank you for that.
That wasn't my.
I think if they were just spectacle, if they were just regular glasses, you can see his eyes. I'm like, great. And make some reflections in it, and maybe a subtle thing, but the fact that you can have this almost 80s style lenses that you saw in the 80s where you have all these wraparound glasses, RoboCop and so forth, it was so cool because it evokes so many things. And I wanted to have this sort of this calm in him where, much like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner and all his other movies, he's a badass. So I imagine Virgil is this kind of I don't say swashbuckling, but he had his elegance to him, and I wanted to make sure
he's Virgil Hills for a reason. He's Steve McQueen,
right? So it's like I wanted to make sure that you had the beats in there of when people look at it side by side. It's like that's like the Blade Runner poster, but it's my own take on that sort of vibe. But the signature I really wanted to nail is like, I got to get a monster in his lenses. I have to get a monster because I was doing the tentacles and I was like, I got to get a monster in there. So, and I wanted to have that absolute calm, just what you said, Steve McQueen or whoever. Yeah. And he just kind of like, are we going to go here? Or I guess we're going to do this. And it's like these moments I see in my head as I'm doing the poster. I see these beats of the movie. So to all the fans out there and to you, Brian, like, we got to make this happen because I would rather see that than some bazillion sequels or some kind of cookie cutter stuff that we see all day long. I love comic books. I love movies. I love comic book movies, obviously. I wasn't wearing this shirt tonight. I normally be wearing a Marvel shirt. That's me, right? But I love films. And, just hearing you tonight describe your conceptual thinking, what got you to Hellcop and then kind of emerging it. It's exciting. It makes me go, I want this as a movie, or I want this as a series because this would be dope. This would be really cool.
Well, I was really surprised to see how many people kind of come out of the woodwork and
Right.
oh yeah, I loved that series back in the day, or that was my first comic, or yada yada yada.
Right.
And it was funny, actually, 6 months ago, before any of this stuff was like announced at all, there was a woman that did a review of the original series for just, she was just talking about, how it was 90s fab, and just, and she was all about that, because that was also one of our debates, because, the original, he had the sort of anime tassel, sort of sideburn kind of things. And
right.
And my assistant, she kept going, it's like, well, maybe you should do that again. And it's like, if my style was different, maybe, but my style was representational for
well, I think we get a shot at sort of what that looked like in the 90s comic and everything.
It reminds me of Bash the Stampede a little bit.
No, I was definitely going for a little bit of a anime manga sort of influence on it.
I'd like to tell you, Brian, Brent and I had this discussion. I don't know if he's discussed this with you. I'm not going to reveal anything, but I had a brainstorming session with him where I started kind of running with it about like follow-up variants we could do with Hellcop that really pay homage to posters of the past. And I think I named off at least 3 or 4. And Brent was pretty excited. So hopefully I get the opportunity to do it again, because I want to keep I want you to smile. I want you to be like, okay, I get it. And I got at least 4 of them that no doubt when you see them, you'll be like, oh, wow. These are cool.
There's no question about it.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. No, I mean, some of the variants that I like that are going to be, they're actually my own just alternate covers. We have the 2 Play Demon covers coming up.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And one was actually, the first one was me. The second one was one of my dear old friends who passed away a while ago, Drew Posada, who used to be a big pinup artist back in the 2000s, I guess, in the late 90s and stuff. And he's just this beautiful, woman with horns and stuff like that, and then kind of fun story descriptions around the outside. Our cherubs, really as bad as they seem, and I mean, that's gonna be one of the things. Because what I like is playing with the stuff you don't think about. So we have all these tattooed cherubs, in the first issue and stuff that he's even talking to, and cherubs. Their signs you'll see in little different stores in Hell. It's like, cherubs are banned and all that kind of stuff. And he, quips, it's like, you have these babies flying around above you with no diapers. Of course, you're going to ban those things, right? And they're drunk all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of cherub poo around.
That's right.
That's what I like taking the fantastic and then thinking, like, what would it be like if you're really in that world? It's
right.
like, it's like, what do you, it's like, especially if you start realizing they're all, these demons have jobs, and they do all this stuff, and there's been civilizations in Hell as long as there have been civilizations here, and there have been humans on Hell as long as there have been humans here too, and all those things that you can play with too, as far as like, those people who have maybe, aren't around here anymore, but they're over there still doing stuff. There's like, there'll be a story later on, not in this first miniseries, about a guy who he knows how to get across in the soft spots, and he takes like cuts of John Lennon's 10th solo album and brings it over here and makes it his own, and stuff. And they have to eventually shut that guy down. So there's that trafficking of stuff going both ways.
Right. Yeah, your line of thinking is amazing. I love it. I like that it gets deep into the weeds of sorts, and it affords so many like kind of narrative opportunities, because you're building this like really deep, rich backstory of like, when you said the demons have jobs, the cherubs fly around, they don't have diapers or whatever. It sounds really compelling, because it's what we creatives do. You go deep into it, and you kind of decide, like, that's awesome, and you decide like how deep with this do I want to go?
Yeah, we have on that one we have Kurt Cobain's 11th album. I was gonna put John Lennon on there, but Jim Valentino is such a fan of John. I didn't want to rub in that John maybe was in Hell.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's awesome. I put up this Play Demon cover so everybody could take a look at it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that second one?
Let me grab it really quick. I think I can find it fairly quickly.
There was a Spawn cover that I did that I didn't release.
Oh,
I had 2 approved ones from Todd. And the one that I didn't release that I thought would be fun would be, so it's basically Virgil perp walking Spawn, right? You know, he's got, and
oh yeah.
And then I kind of realized at the end of the day, well, especially in our day and age right now, Spawn's a black guy and Virgil's a cop and he's leading him. Yeah, even though I mean it lightheartedly, there are going to be people who aren't going to take that lightheartedly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yeah.
Let me look.
So yeah, I mean, I just like to at least close, with you, Brian, and say it was an absolute pleasure doing that cover. It was probably one of my favorite pieces I've done in a really long time because I did the movie poster stuff or even stuff in my career. It was just a pleasure to work on it, and I was hoping, obviously, I just went for it. So I just fully just illustrated, and I sort of asked Brent to trust me, and I said, I will reveal it soon, and I would reveal him a little snapshot so you could just see barely a little bit of his partner. And he was like, "It's killing me, I can't breathe." And then when I revealed it, he was just over the moon, thankfully. And
oh yeah,
for me, it was like layering it. It's like it's important to me. Like, okay, I would love to hear, and I even asked him. I said, "I'd love to hear what Image thinks, but I'd love to hear what Brian thinks." Yeah, that's so cool. And so I was thrilled that you liked it, and I hope that folks out there like it too, and they want to buy more books.
I think they will.
I think so too, without question.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome.
And I think at the point in time when they start really, when they get to read the actual story, they're going to be captivated, and we're going to have fans for many, many years.
Yeah, hope so. I hope so. It's always one of those things you can't really, you're really like, you plan for success, in comics, but it's like always like, until you get your final orders, you don't know.
Oh, without question.
But no, this one seems to be really good. I mean, for example, like, because we did the 3D version of it, right? And that's that $7.99 3D anaglyph version, the first one. And we had to get orders in early for that because we had to print the glasses ahead of our final orders. And it alone at $7.99 sold 7,000 copies. So I think that's a good indication of where we're going to be at.
That's pretty good, yeah.
On multiples, because I've done those things before, and if I can factor that as part of the sales that I've seen before of things, and then related to the regular version, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, But yeah, it seems like there's a good vibe for it right now.
No question about it. No question about it. No, I think it's fantastic, and I personally have read it and think it's fantastic, and I'm waiting for more.
Thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, hey, I think we've had a fantastic time. I think that we've learned a lot here. It's really awesome to, get you both together and sort of hear the creative process and, kick around some other fun things. Really, really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Guys, Rob,
nice
meeting you again.
It's been a pleasure, man. This is wonderful. Yeah.
See you guys.
Awesome. Well, everybody have a great one, and we will talk to everyone soon.
Great. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Bye.